So, good afternoon again. Let's continue rather with our third topic, which is the code of ethics of a business. So, we're done with the fundamentals of ethics. Last week we did introduction to ethics. So, we'll continue with the code of ethics of a business. So, let's proceed, no? So, what are the objectives? Our objectives is to define the code of ethics, identify the use of code of ethics, identify the users of the code of ethics, and identify the contents of the code of ethics. So let's continue. No? So what's a code pala? What's a code of ethics? No? The code of ethics is it's like a conduct of the business. It's a list of the things that are the do's and don'ts, or the what are the things that you have to follow ethically in a workplace. So allow me to move my face here para makita nyo lang. Ayan. So, the Code of Conduct provides employees with guidance. So, basically, you will be guided, no, in terms of what are the ethical situations and what are the things to do whenever there are problems. Like, for example, theft in the workplace, or sexual harassment, or malpractice, things like that. When you are having trouble trying to comprehend or trying to solve these things, you as the employee or the manager will have to refer immediately to the code of conduct. What are the things we have to do and what we don't have to do in situations like these, and what are the how will we provide penalties for these? So it's always provided in the code of conduct. An example of this is the school handbook. No, a school handbook. That's the most I think common thing that you can relate to in a code of conduct in your relative to your positions right now as students. So, di ba na-address tanan is all in the school or in the handbook. What are the things that are bad? What are the things that are good? What do you have to do and what you don't have to do? And what are the penalties whenever you do bad things? Very simple. No? So it can be considered again code of conduct as an ethical code or a code of ethics. The principles adopted by the organization, again, to assist you, the employees and the managers, or even the owners of the business, when there are situations that will arise. And mind you, there will really be situations that will arise all the time, no? Medyo na mawala na yung mga problema here and there. The problem, or the situation, or rather the job right now of the people in the organization, the internal people, is to handle these things. So the code of conduct will help you with that. Okay? Next, what are the terms to remember? One term to remember is the code of conduct, the word. No? Again, the code of conduct literally is the document that's designed to influence the behavior of the employees. Again, mauna siya ang imuhang sundon. These are the things or the write-ups that you have to do and what not to do. No? Whether there are violations when you do certain things. Because not all things that you think are right are also right in relative to the place that you're working. No? Dili man relatively dapat mali is a bad thing, but what are the things that should not be done in a workplace? Like for example, haircut. There are situations where in workplaces it's okay for you to have whatever kind of haircut you want, long hair or short hair, or mapakolor kayo ng buhok, but it's not always the case. Just like in schools, there are schools that allow things like these. No? There are some schools that don't allow it as well. So, there's a code of conduct for you. And then the code of practice is quite similar, but it's different in a sense. Why? Because it's adopted by a profession or a governmental or non-governmental organization. Usually, code of practice is provided when you are a professional, like for example, a CPA, a doctor, or a what are the other things? An architect or something like that, no? Then you can at least have at least na-adjun na mo code of practice. Okay? So what are the steps for developing a code of conduct for your company? Very simple. You have to first list your personal values as an owner of a business. In order for you to create a conduct inside your company, you have to at least look at yourself and see what your values are. It will always differ based on what kind of person you are. We all have different values. For example, if you're a traditional person, a very conservative person, it will reflect in your code of conduct. But if you're a liberated person who believes in different things compared to conservatives, lahi po na siya. Like for example, if you think that personal growth is not affected or should not be what do you call this? Should not be a priority. Rather, experience lang. Then it shows in your code of conduct. Even in terms of loyalty, if you're a person who believes that employees should be used or utilized and not become and you should not make it personal. No, walay personal attachment to your employees. Mugawas na sa code of conduct nimo. But if you're a kind of owner or manager that believes that there should always be loyalty and dependability and let's say tenureship in the company, then mugawas po na siya. It all will depend on what kind of personal value you have. Next thing to do is to discuss the company's values as well. What are the values that your employees or your co-owners have as well, not just your own. No, dapat hindi ka selfish. You should look into what they want as well and compromise at the end of the day. No? How would you have to ask the questions like how would the company like to treat ethical issues in situations? Hindi man na pwede na isa lang. There should because that's already dictatorial. No? There should be democracy. No? When writing code of conduct, no, one should consult their staff and stakeholders always. Dapat na-adjun na sense of understanding what our clients, what our consumers want. Rather than us saying, what do I want? Because at the end of the day, what will determine the trajectory of your business will not be yourself alone, but as well as the needs and wants of your consumers or your stakeholders. No? So what are the questions that you will have to ask no, when you're creating these things? Or when you are asking your stakeholders. Number one is what does ethics mean to them? And how effectively does the business put its value into practice? These kinds of questions are very simple, but it will allow you to create a very, at least, comprehensive and easy to understand code of ethics. Like for example, most Catholic schools do not allow their students to have their hair long or something like that. No, this is very complicated, but it's very common because you look at the values in terms of the cleanliness, in terms of how you present yourself. So it will depend, no? Especially if you're in a program where di man cleanliness but presentability is very important. For example, in education, di ba? But it depends. No? It will always depend on the kind of owner you are or the kind of manager you are. So of course, the next thing to do is to review the code of ethics written by others. So yun, pakita ko lang konti para makita ninyo. So yan. To help, you have to at least review after because of course, dili man na siya stagnant every year, mauna lang na. As the years go by, there will always be things that you have to adjust and things you have to change based on the social climate, the climate of the world and how everything will be interpreted. Therefore, like there are things that are acceptable right now that may not be acceptable in the future. No, you have to contact as well other people in different fields to look into the differences that you have and what are the things that you can work on, things like that. No, always review. Hindi naman yan mawawala dapat. To check into things always. Next, when you have to draft again the code of ethics. No. What are the things to do? You have to give the code of ethics a memorable title. Number one. No? Avoid creating very simple titles. Well, it's up to you. At the end of the day, it will always be up to you. But the best thing to do is at least create something very memorable. No? Like for example, choose a title like this. No? The way we conduct ourselves. The AB Communications. Living our values at AB Communications. Very, very neat to look at. No? Something that you like to read. No? Rather than you saying na, ano yung code of values. It shows promise and commitment, diba? Of course, you have to include a table of contents, no? And para lang na for those who cannot really read into everything, you can skim through, or at least there's proper structure in your content, no? Of course, have an introduction or prologue, no? Very simple to do. And then, of course, what a code of conduct should include. What are the things that you have to write down there? Very simple. Ethical principles. Course, what are the things or the behaviors that you have to do inside the workplace, what are the values that you have to follow, who should be accountable or be taken into who will take the responsibility rather when someone does something bad, no? If there are actions that are done, who will have to take accountability, who will be blamed or di man blamed but who will have to absorb the actions committed. The standard of the conduct, the job includes complying with the job description, rather commitment to the organization. What's the benchmark of the things that you have to do in the workplace? The standard of the practice as well, and disciplinary actions. What are the penalties? Okay. So what are the tips for writing a code of conduct? Now, the things to do is just make it simple, make it clear, easy to understand. Dapat hindi siya mahirap, no? Just for the at least everyone should at least understand or grasp the concept of the code of conduct, not make it too overcomplicated. Of course, use words or use examples of acceptable or unacceptable behavior. No, dapat may mga examples, like for example, do not loiter around the campus. Example, walking around the campus or during class hours, wala kayo sa classes ninyo. So at least maklarify lang ang points ninyo further. And of course, get someone to read the documents, proofread na friend or family member. No? Always have a proofreader to check if there are mistakes. Hindi mo dyan mawala na basing na mali or whatever. So, at the end of the day, for whom do the code of ethics have to be used for? Kinsa magamit ani? For schools na adjud na administrators, everyone actually, teachers, even students sa school handbook, and employees. For business, employees, customers, suppliers, owners, government, society in general, when they want to understand what are the things to do or not. No? And of course, let's show the examples of the code of ethics. Kani. For example, the left side, no, very simple, be responsible, be fair, basta na example lang. In content marketing, a code of ethics, and even in schools, like for example, this one, the student code of conduct, na very simple lang. Everything is written down and everything is understandable. Okay? Why do you have to know this? Because in businesses, in entrepreneurship, you have to create your own code of ethics, of course, di ba? So I think that's it. So if you have questions, please do just chat anytime. Again, don't forget to look at this recording. And after this, I think we're good. Okay na tayo for the 3 topics. No? We're done with the introduction. We're done with the second one, which is the foundation of ethics, and the code of ethics then. After this, I will be providing a quiz on Wednesday. You just have to answer for the week. And then, if you're done, then we can proceed with applied economics. Okay? So, I think that's it. Goodbye and thank you, everyone.